paddy works on the railway. In 1842 from Hartlepool I moved to Crewe, found myself a job to do, working on the railway.
Hello, back in my workshop, but not returning again. As you may have seen in my last video, I built a new computer. This video, I'm setting up a new computer for my YouTube studio. Now, I have multiple cameras. The only reason I need multiple cameras is because I do lives. If you're just doing a video, then you can manage with 1 or 2 cameras quite easily. And if you've got your time, you can manage with 1 camera and you can just move it, change the angles and start again. So you can do it that way. Or better still, have somebody to run the camera for you, who will walk around and focus in and get the angle shots you want. But if you're doing live, you can't do that. You've got to be able to switch instantly from one view to another. And I do them on my own, as most of us do. So it needs to be easy for me to do. Plus, if you buy second-hand cameras off of eBay, it doesn't cost that much to set up. I have got too many. 3 to 4 cameras is enough for anybody really, but I've got 8. The Polycom is Stuart really thought, he said they were fun, and I watched him playing and they were fun, so I bought one. I bought mine for £43 off of eBay as not working. I then fixed it. So it didn't cost me a great deal of money, and it's nice and fun to play with. Whether it will become a permanent fixture in the setup, I don't know yet. But we'll play with it and find out. Right, so what I've got running at the moment, I've got 2 versions of OBS running. One is doing the recording that you're watching. The other one has some basic stuff on there, just so I've got something to start with, because if I didn't have anything I couldn't record it. Now I start with a camera pool. As I plug the cameras in, I find them, identify them and name them. I'll show you for why in a minute. I also always have a thing called banners, which is my overlays, bits that's going to go over the top of the screen, be that a movie or something, anything. So I created that as well. One of the reasons is that what you're actually watching is one of my banners, which has got the screen captured. So go into here. You see on this one everything's turned off, so there's a line through the eyes on all of these. If I turn that on, then that's the one I'm actually recording on. And if I turn that one off and that one on, that's the one I'm actually recording. I'll turn that off again. And now you should see what I'm seeing on the screen as opposed to the multiple images by having it turned on here. But I can also have movie files or picture, my little banner, or a Windows capture, which I don't know what I've got configured at the moment. No. So I can set up that. I can capture Microsoft Edge or something. So that's what I do as a default. Camera pool. If I go over here and add a camera, do that, you'll see that all my cameras have got pretty much the same name, because most of mine are Logitech Brios. So they've pretty much got the same name, and it's easier if I give them a name that I can recognise. So I plug them in one at a time, find them, give them a name, and put them into the camera source. But they're all pretty much the same. Right, so if I go on to overhead cam and properties, all my cameras are set up the same. So they've got deactivate when not showing, resolution is always custom, and resolution is 1080p or 1920 pixels by 1080 pixels. I use the match output frames per second because if I'm streaming I'm using 30 frames per second, if I'm recording I'm using 60 frames per second. So match output means that I'll do the best to do that. I've got one camera which can't do that, but that's fine. Video format, any color space default, color range default. You can configure those if you need to later on. If you've mounted your camera to a stand and it happens to be upside down on that stand, you can flip the whole thing over, lift it vertically. And I don't use my camera mics at all. I use two different mics, one for videos and one for lives. The video mic that you're listening to at the moment is screwed to the ceiling above the Wraith, and I put that through a sound filter to remove background noise. So that's how the cameras are all set up. They're all set the same. If I had something that required a special setting, then I would give it that special setting in that setup. But life is easier if all the stuff is the same. OBS, when you first install it, it will run a setup wizard, which will track your hardware and it'll come up with some basic settings for you based on that. And that is this bit. It sets up all of that. I'm not going to go too far into this because it depends on your hardware, and the wizard that it runs automatically will do the job. If you want to change it later on, then you can look it up on YouTube, find out the settings and see how it's done. There's YouTube that covers the whole lot. But sorry, that's an advanced mode. Let's go back to simple mode. Right, so in simple mode you've got streaming, you've got recording, and it's all fairly straightforward. Both of mine at the moment should be on software because we've got a low spec graphics card in there, and it'll be fine. But I will change the graphics card with the old one that I'm swapping it out with, which is the way it's going to go. Audio settings, I've got most of mine turned off. I use different mics my own way. We'll come to that later. And everything I do is in 1080p, which is 1920 by 1080 pixels, aspect ratio of 16:9, and that works for me. If I was to be filming, like phone filming, portrait as opposed to landscape mode, then I would change it here. But I don't want to do that, so I'm not going to. Bottom line is the settings are created by the wizard, and it does the job for you. So the next thing you come to is scenes. Before we get there, we've got scene collections. You can create multiple different sets of scenes. I'm going to be using two. I'm going to be using a recording and a streaming set. There's not much difference, but for future use I want to be able to separate the two out. So when I set the camera up to use it, I will pick one. So let's start with creating a scene for my introduction bit, portraits. And we'll call that portrait. So I've got a new scene. It needs some sources. So the first thing it's going to need is a video capture device. Now, because I've got my camera pool set up, I can just pick it by name. It's already done. And there it is. We're also going to need a way of recording sound. Audio input capture. And again, they're set up in my camera pool, so they've got names. This is my streaming setup, so I'm going to create Jabra. And finally, all of mine will have a scene, and that's the banners scene. Now that is an overlay screen that will go over the top of this picture because it's above, it's on the list, and it will allow me to do things. Can I do it? Right, so if I turn this on and then go back to that, so that's my banners overlay. Now I will be using my control mechanism, which is going to be set up later on Touch Portal. It'll be separate videos because different subjects. I'll be able to touch a button on there and that will come on. It runs through once and it goes off again. I could use it to put a picture up. I could use it to do all sorts of things. That's it. Pretty much all the cameras are going to be set up the same. So I can copy them. Duplicate. Let's do the overhead next. So we'll call that overhead. And all I do then is change the camera. Put that in a bin. Add video capture device. And because I've got my named pool, I just go to overhead, put that in, drag it to the bottom. It's most important that these layers are in order because that's the order. If you imagine it as 3 pieces of paper, one on top of the other, that's the order that they will be seen. So you want them in the right order. Now, I cheat. I duplicate that one again, and I call that overhead zoom 1. This is the reason I use high quality cameras, because what I will do with that so I'll zoom in and then I'll do it again. Zoom 2. And zoom in closer. Now I can use my switching software now to go from one camera to the other automatically without having to mess about. It's not real, but it's close enough. And because I use a high quality camera, the image, even at this size, is still good. And I just want to do that again for all the other cameras. So I'm not going to record them all because it's the same thing over and over again. But what I will do is I will do one manually again from scratch so you get the idea. So skip forward a bit if you don't need this bit. So I create a scene. give it a name, and then I add a source to that scene. And the source is going to be video capture device as existing, and the headstock's got to be there somewhere. There it is. And then a scene, which is my banners, and then an audio capture, which, because I'm setting this up for the streaming, is going to be the Jabra. Now those two are out of line, so I just do a drag and drop that, and it's there. So I now have that set up. It's a good idea when you've got things right to lock them off. Just click those padlocks and it can't be changed then. Well, it can be changed, but you've got to unlock it first. So this is my second camera, and again, I don't need to do that every time because I can just duplicate it. The camera's scenes set up. You'll get your terminology right with OBS. Scenes and sources, audio mix, and we come on to transitions. There's one plugin that I always install with OBS, and that's called Move. If you go onto the OBS website, just look for Move transitions, and it will allow you to install, they call it a plugin. Plugin is a standard word for these things. And it's just an add-on to OBS, which allows you to run other code on top of it. There's lots of them available. They can do all sorts of weird and wonderful things. I don't use many. I use Move, and that's about it. If you have a particular problem, there's probably a plugin there which will solve that problem for you. Likewise, in OBS itself, there is thousands of settings. Well, that might be an exaggeration. There's a lot of settings which I don't need, so I don't use them. Don't get swamped by the fact that there's stuff there that you don't use. Just use what you need, and if your needs change, a setting or a plugin will help you resolve that down the line. I think that's about it for this. Now I could, in theory, do a live using my mouse to change cameras. It would be complicated. So if I want to go from overhead to some portrait to overhead, I'll just do that. And I can go to overhead zoom 1 just by clicking it again. Zoom 2, same with the mobile. So I can switch cameras by selecting the scene. A much easier way of doing that is to have a hotkey system on a separate device, so I can put a picture up there, press the picture, and it switches to that. There's multiple ones out there, from plug-in dedicated keyboards to Stream Deck, which is a proprietary, moderately expensive way of doing it, or Touch Portal that I use, which basically requires an old tablet or phone. I use a tablet because I got it for free. It's old ones, it doesn't need to be anything fancy, and it turns that into a keyboard for you. That's my next video. I'm going to set that up. But for now, that's it. That's my OBS configured, ready to roll. I can use it to earworm for Terry's live on Sunday. My new computer's in place, and all I've got to do now is make it more accessible for me to use it when I'm doing a live, when I need to change cameras quickly. The reason I like Touch Portal is because it's fairly simple to use. It's not very simple to use, but rather like what we've just done, there's an awful lot you can just do with create once, then copy and paste it. And you can do some basic level coding, so you can have one button do multiple things, which I like, and some basic logic as well, so you can say, well, if this is that, then do that. We'll come on to that on the next video. Useful whether you use Touch Portal or not, because the same basic rules apply to any hotkey system. Thanks for watching, and hopefully you gained something from this. If you're going to be doing some live streaming, then that's how mine's set up. If you are just interested because you watch the lives, well, now you know some of what we do. Obviously, before I do a live, all those little zooms and bits and pieces will be configured to the wood that I'm putting on the lathe, set up ahead of time so that everything runs smoothly. So it's not just a question of turning the camera on and go, oh, hang on, Terry does. Yeah, you can just turn the camera on and go with whatever you've got, but normally it takes about half an hour to sort of configure and set up before you can do a live. Anyway, thanks for watching. Cheers for now.